This is Miss Kim. Just Kim. So, oh good, it's right here. So for the last 27 years, I've lived by a mission statement that I believe the voice of the people most impacted by an issue should be heard, and their recommendation should be used in the making of public policy. And I've never seen anybody shake their head no, but shaking your head yes and making it a reality are two very, very different things. And so I am honored to work in the New Haven area with Mothers and Others for Justice. This is a grassroots advocacy group whose members are living in disenfranchised and underserved communities. And the group comes together to train, mobilize, and support efforts to impact changes in needed public policy. So I'm going to tell you a story, and I hope I haven't told you it before, and if I have, I hope you're going to be gracious enough. So the guy is out running, and he sees a crowd coming together, and he can tell that they are agitated. And when he gets closer, he sees that they're all looking up, and a baby is flying out the window. And they gather together, and they catch that baby. And then he sees a second baby is flying out the window. And again, they gather together and they catch the baby. And as the third baby sails out the window, he goes running up to see why the babies are being thrown out of the window. You are a group that knows why those babies are being thrown out of the window. You are a group that serves that community, that helps that community, that speaks out on that community. And I applaud you. Things I heard, you started with what, 1,000 cupcakes? And look where you are now. You are such an impressive group. But there's but you know what? And this is also a group that whether whether you are Christian or Jewish or Muslim, we're supposed to love one another. Supposed to love one another. And sometimes what I heard is you don't know how to love yourself. But that's a topic for another discussion. But the reality is that and this doesn't always go over well, everything you care about is connected to public policy. I want to say that again for those skeptics. Everything that you care about is connected to public policy. You care about education, it's public policy. You care about the hospitals, it's public policy. Whatever it is you care about is connected to policy matters. And so this, while we love the energy and everything we heard this morning, this seminar is going to be on why public policy matters. So Holly, would you like to have something to say?
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So I have learned that if you do not have a relationship with your significant policymakers, how do they know what you have a problem with? They don't. You have to tell them. You cannot assume that your policymaker, your mayor, your alderperson, your zoning official, your board of education, it's different for every state, but how do you know that they know what your issue is? You don't and they don't. They want you to come to them. They want you to tell them what your issues are, what your problems are, because they don't know. Let's face it, a lot of people don't walk in your shoes. I don't walk in your shoes. I can't speak for you, but I can pass on your messages, but it is not as powerful as if it comes from you directly, first person. I can't do that. So you have to be the ones to tell your story. So you have to make sure you connect to your policymakers, your legislators. If you're more nervous to start with the state or federal legislators, you can start with your local mayor. You guys all have good relationships there. And it doesn't have to take a long time. It could just take 5 minutes, one phone call, one meeting, and just speak from your heart because that is the truth. Your heart is the truth. And if you try to be someone you're not to a politician, they will know because they do it every day. When they have to try to make policies that they don't like or they don't support, because a lot of this goes on behind the scenes, I've learned, you have to speak your heart and be true to who you are. Be you. Don't try to be someone else, just be yourself and be true to your heart and who you are and to your story. You know, thank you. So just make a phone call, send an email. If you're too nervous to speak to the person on the phone, because sometimes our legislators do pick up the phone, it's great. You can send them an email, things like that. So these are words of encouragement that we've heard. And personally, I love the Frederick Douglass. It's on my business card for Greater New Haven Coalition for People, which we just disbanded, but power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. When I thought about that quote, and it really stuck into my head, how are they going to know if I don't tell them what I need, what the community needs? They're never going to know. And I'm going to make them change their mind. They work for me. They work for you. They don't work for all the little games and all the little people who pay for their campaigns. They work for us. So the more numbers that we have together, the more voices they will hear and the more they cannot say no to us. And that's what we want to do, not let them say no anymore. I don't care if it's the hard choice to make because social policies are the first ones on the chopping block. And if we all stick together, they cannot say no to all of these voices. They just can't.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Hart, and I am here because back in 2008, I became homeless, and my son was like 5 or 6. Head Start, kindergarten, around there. I became homeless, and I thought I would lose my mind. Right? I didn't have to live in the street, thank God, but I didn't have family to take me in either. So I went to a shelter because I had a relationship with my older person. I went to a shelter that night and I stayed in that shelter for 5 months. And from there, I went to a transitional housing program for 2 years. And what I was in that transitional housing program is where I found mothers for, at the time it was called Mothers for Justice, but now it's Mothers and Others for Justice. Because we don't only have mothers, we have men, we have women who aren't mothers, and stuff. So that's a company called Mothers and Others. But that is when the advocacy bug bit me. What? You don't like what's going on? You don't like how you became homeless? Do something. You know, call your legislator, email him. If you're scared somebody's gonna pick up the phone, call him. Meryl would say, call him 3 o'clock in the morning. No one is gonna answer the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning. But when they get that message, they would have to respond, right? And the reason why I'm so adamant about all of this is because it wasn't until I found my voice until things started changing. And also, I found that if we don't vote, we don't count. And when we don't count, we don't matter. It's just that simple, right? And a lot of folk only, I know in New Haven, a lot of people, you know, underprivileged people, I guess I would say, they only tend to vote in the presidential election, right? And then they probably, I voted. You know what? Your mayoral election is more important than that presidential election. You know, your state government, your governor, you know, your senators and stuff, you know, they're more important. And so that's a if we just gotta vote and be proud to vote, let's just vote in our local, in our state elections. I mean, yeah, or I vote in all three, and I've been voting since I was 18 years old, 18 years old. And the first time I voted was the presidential election, and it was for Jimmy Carter. That's how old I am. And he won too, you know, so that empowered me, right? And stuff. So yeah, so voting is it's detrimental. And once you vote, remember that politician works for me. He works for us. We can go and ask him, hey, listen, this ain't how things, you know, and I would tell him in a minute, I voted you in. You know,
That's right.
yeah, because that's just how powerful our vote is. Yeah. And in fact, the end of September, I went to the National Conference on Hunger and Nutrition and Health, right? Very big deal, because our president said that he was going to eradicate hunger by 2030, right? Okay, well, he's trying. I mean, you know, at least he's starting, right? But I was chosen to go. So I was there, and I seen our president, and I seen the Kamala Harris's husband, and I always forget his name, but he's the first man. And I mean, I just seen so many politicians and heard so much. But after that, after I came back from the conference, Connecticut's representative called me, and she asked me, she was there, she was on stage, and she called me and she asked me, she says, Kim, what did you think of the conference? This is a big deal, because this woman, she is well known, she's powerful, and she's calling little old me. Well, not so little, but y'all know what I mean, right? Okay, yeah, but she called me. She said, Kim, how did you like the conference? And after the shock went away, after I realized that it was Rosa for real, I'm like, you know, I said, it was great. I'm grateful to have been chosen, but it wasn't enough people with lived experience on these panels, you know, because those who are most impacted by the issue, those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution.
Yes.
Get the quote back up. Sorry. Okay, so this is in closing, this is a quote that really speaks to me, because I spend a lot of time out in the community, always embarrass my kids, talk to everybody everywhere I go, because how do you know what's important to people unless you talk to them? And so we are in the business of coalition building, of movement building. And so this is from The Little Prince. And it says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the people to gather the wood, to divide the work, to give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Friends, sisters, we are envisioning a different world. We need to envision a different world that everybody matters. Every child has an opportunity to grow up in safety. And we are not living in that world. Last night, I went back to the hotel room, and there on Facebook is my daughter reporting that she's safe in North Carolina because there was a shooting. Another young couple moved from Chicago. She's 9 months pregnant. She reported that she's safe in North Carolina. And just last month, she was at a parade in Chicago and had to report that she was safe. What kind of world are we living in when you are no longer safe in your church, in your synagogue, in Walmart, wherever you go? It's got to change. And while I am not diminishing the importance of everything I have heard you say about mental health, other countries have people with problems with mental health. What they don't have is access to guns. They don't have access to guns. And that, my friends, is where the work needs to start in public policy. Mitt Romney, $50 million in donations from the NRA. Richard Burr in North Carolina, $5 million in contributions from the NRA. So yes, please keep catching those babies. Please minister to the families, but please march on City Hall, march on your state capitol, and march on the White House until this country changes our laws. Thank you so much. So are there any questions?
We got a group of people that also lost their children. And we went to Washington, D.C. And we went, there was a big rally against gun violence that year. And I never forget, my state rep, he told me, he goes, how are we gonna know what you need unless you ask?
That's right. 100%.
We're here to serve you. We want to know what your issues are. So when we went to Washington, D.C., I told my wife and a group of others that were with us, I said, let's go see our congressman. So we literally walked into the office of the congressman. We spoke with him. And I knew he was there for a long time because he had a huge office. In Washington, D.C., the more tenure you have, the bigger your office
Bigger your
is.
office. Yes,
And
exactly.
this guy had a huge office. He's like, this guy has to do something. I mean, he's been here long enough. So after we spoke to our congressman, we said, let's go to the opposition. Let's go talk to some Republicans.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's what we did. We walked into all these offices that we could get into. We spoke to some of their staffers, but we wanted them to know we were here. And this gun violence has to stop. This is something that's preventable, that's taking a generation, taking our loved ones, taking our future, taking scholars and doctors and just social workers and people that are loved and want to share love and be loved. These are just, it's our children. It's our loved ones. We have to continue to fight for them. We are
100%.
We are the voices.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.